Hello my dear students, today we are going to review a little bit about square roots, and we are going to obtain the square root for numbers that are not exact. In class we had a little introduction, and due to time we were not able to review it, so I'm going to leave a few squares solved here for you as reference. Okay, the one that we had in class, exactly square root of 185. How do we obtain the square root? As we mentioned in class, and I make some corrections, we work with groups of two numbers, as you can see. Groups of two numbers, so that will divide this 185 into two sets of numbers, 1 and 85, as you can see. The first thing we need to obtain is a number that we can multiply times itself that will give us exactly 1 without going over 1. How can we do that? Well, 1 times 1. So 1 times 1 is 1, and we subtract. After that, we have to bring down the whole set of two numbers. So that will bring down the 85 as a whole, as 1. Okay? So here, now we need to duplicate the original number that we had, this number 1 here. We have to duplicate it, so now we're going to have 2, as we mentioned in class. Okay? Now I'm going to need a number that when I add an additional number multiplied by itself, it will give me close to 85 without going over. If I use 2, it will be 22 times 2 is 44. If I use 3, it will be 23 times 3, it will be 69. If I use 4, it will be 24 times 4, and that will be 96, which will go over, so that number will not serve us. So the number that is closer without going over would be 23 times 3. So 3 times 3, 9, 3 times 2, 6, so we have 69. Okay, so this number here is 3. So when we multiply 23 times 3 is 69. This number is the number that we are going to place here. Remember that here we're getting our result. The rest is just for procedure. All of these other numbers are just for procedure. Okay, so now we make a subtraction. Here we're going to have then that the difference is 16. When we take 85 and subtract 69, we have the difference of 16. Now we can continue. Now I need to place a decimal number here because I do not have any number here to continue forward. So that's the only way that I can continue, by placing a 0. Remember, because we're working in sets of two numbers, then that decimal point here is going to allow me to add 2 zeros at the end, similar to division, but in this case we have to work with sets of 2. So now the number that we have here needs to be doubled. How are we going to double this number here? We're going to need to double it in order for us to be able to continue. So that will give us from 13, the double of 13 is 26. And we do the same step that we did previously. We need a number that when we multiply it time itself, right, it will allow me to have a number that will not go over 1,600. Okay? So how are we going to do that? Let me take a little corner here. We have then 26. I have a little trick that I do. I can cover the last two numbers on both sides, and that way I have an idea of what number I need, right? So I need to go from 2 to 16. That will give me then, I can use a number without going over. That could be, let's try 6. So that'll be 6 times 6, 36. I carry 3. 6 times 6, 36, and 3 that I carry is 39. I carry 3. 6 times 2 is 12, plus the 3 that I carried is 15. Now this difference here gives me exactly 4. Remember that you can pause at any time and go over any of the points that I mentioned previously. Okay, and continue. So now the new number that I have to add here is 6. We're going to be working with two numbers after the decimal point. I'm not going to ask you to do any more than two numbers after the decimal point. So far we have one number after the decimal point. So now we need to double this number again and repeat the same procedure that we did previously. So now we have 12, we carry 1, that would be 6 times 2 is 6, plus 1 that I carry is 7, and then now I have 3. Okay, so now, the number that I have here, the left number is very small. I only have 4. The residual number is only 4. It's very small. Remember that because I added a decimal point earlier, that decimal point can allow me to add two numbers, 2 sets of zeros in this case. But still, my number is too small. So what can I do now? I can add another set of zeros. But in order for me to do that, because I already add 1 set of zeros, of 2 zeros, I will have to place a 0 right here. Okay? And that will give me then another set of zeros. All right? And then, now the double of that number is this number right here. And I know that I can go over 1 more time. Okay? So this is how you get exactly the decimals. I only needed 2 numbers after the decimal point. We got 3, but that's for you to have an idea of how it's done. I will be adding an additional example for you to have. Okay? And some problems for you to practice. Thank you.